Hello and welcome to another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest today is Dave Foley. He is here from Bark Busters Home Dog Training. We'll meet him and learn all about Bark Busters when we come back, so stay with us. Welcome back to For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest today is a first-timer on the show. His name is Dave Foley, and he is here from Bark Busters. It's a home dog training place. First of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Let's start by explaining to people, if they don't know, what Bark Busters is.
Sure. Bark Busters is the world's largest, most trusted dog training system. We operate in 12, 15 countries all over the world.
International.
We operate in different languages because we teach people how to communicate clearly with their dog. It was created by a woman named Sylvia Wilson who lived in Australia. She ran a shelter. She saw dogs being brought in and put to sleep just because they were misbehaving. So she started telling people, look, keep your dog. I will come to your house. I'll help you train the dog, and then you can keep the dog. And that became Bark Busters. Since then, we've trained over 600,000 dogs all over the world.
Wow.
And it's really effective because we operate on a canine level.
Right.
You think like the dog. That's the key. That's exactly right. That's the key.
It's nice to know that this company was founded by a dog lover, someone who didn't want to have dogs be put to sleep if it wasn't necessary.
Oh, absolutely. Sylvia is absolutely insistent on that. Every Bark Buster, when we get interviewed before we enter the system, and she wants to know that you love dogs. It's not a business that you would just get into to make money. It's a business that she insists. It's one of our tenets as Bark Busters is to support shelters, to help dogs stay out of shelters by training them, by working with owners. And as a matter of fact, one of our features is if an owner doesn't keep the dog, the guarantee that we give them goes with the dog. So we will go to the new owner's house
and train them
and start all over again with the same dog with the new owner if that becomes necessary.
Isn't it basically a fact of life, though, that some dogs with their temperament or personality just aren't right for certain situations, environments, homes, maybe a family, maybe other pets? There are so many variables involved.
There are bad matches. That's what I call them. Okay. There's no bad dogs. There's no bad families. There are bad matches.
Just like with people, right?
Exactly. Just like with people. Sometimes people choose the wrong dog. I had a man in his mid-80s. He adopted a puppy. He called me up. He called me up about 2 weeks later and said, I don't know what I was thinking.
That thing is running around like crazy, huh?
It just had way too much energy for him.
Yeah.
I had another woman who was a tiny woman, adopted a Newfoundland. Now she had a beautifully, immaculately furnished house. This dog is a giant breed. He's about this high. He's walking around. He weighs 250 pounds.
How do you hold him on a leash? How do you walk him?
Exactly. And how do you keep him in your house when his tail sweeps off the table, the side tables and stuff? She was able to keep the dog, but the man in his 80s, he gave up the dog, and I got contacted by the new owner, and we went over and helped her.
That's fantastic. Yeah. You hear a lot about dog trainers, but usually it's just a trainer local. It's not often that you hear about a dog training franchise, but Bark Busters is basically a franchise, and it's international.
It's international, but that's one of our strengths. If we have what's called the Bark Net, and I can communicate with every other Bark Buster in the world if I speak their language. And if I have a dog, say, that's climbing trees, I have a dog that's climbing trees. Can anybody help me? And they'll all give me feedback. Oh yeah, I worked with a dog. Here's what we do. We help each other solve problems. So it's not just me working with the dog. If I have an issue that I can't handle,
you've got the power of the whole company. International company. Exactly. Now, since it is a franchise, obviously there are certain I guess, company-wide rules and regulations that you would have to adhere to as a franchise owner? Are there certain things that, you know, this company does differently or you adhere to, like owning a Subway shop? You know, you order their product, and how does it work with you as a franchise owner?
Well, it does that to a small degree. You know, the equipment, we have very special equipment that we use, special proprietary leashes, collars, training aids, things like that. But generally, no. Generally, we use whatever the client has as long as it's good quality and things like that. We do have proprietary methods. We do have very strict standards. We all use the same techniques all over the country, so that, because number one, they're effective. Number two, we try and keep the system pure. We try and work with what everybody else is working, what we've created over the years. It's now been 29 years. That what we've created over the years that works. We're not going to reinvent the wheel.
Right, exactly right.
You know,
what works.
It works, and so that's what we do.
And you know what? What was her name? Sylvia?
Sylvia.
If
Sylvia
it
Wilson.
prevents dogs from going to shelters in the first place, then it's all worthwhile.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
Let's talk about just some hot button topics just off the top of our head. The thing nowadays is pit bulls. It's all, you know, pit bulls. They are very predominant in the shelters because, and right now they're the, you know, I guess the flavor of the month, so to speak. You know, young people decide that they want them because they appear to be tough dogs, and you know, there's a sort of a, I guess, an opinion that they have a certain temperament. Talk about some of these misnomers and things that are true.
Well, that's the wrong reason to get a dog, because he's a tough dog.
Yeah.
Okay. The reason you should get a dog is because you want to make him part of your family.
Absolutely.
You're adopting a family member. You're bringing someone into your life, into your apartment, into your lifestyle, into your family, an extended family when you go visit and things like that.
You know, you know, you love them when they pass away, and you mourn for them just like you would any other member of the family. That's when you know they are a part of the family.
Pit bulls, you know, there's nothing wrong with the breed. They have been misused and abused. There are dogs out there that have been bred to be violent, have been bred to be aggressive. Now, we can help them, but they need a very dedicated owner to do the work, to show this dog the right way to behave. And we've saved very many of those. But if you're buying a pit bull just because you want a tough dog, that's a bad reason to get a dog.
And that's how they end up back in shelters, you know.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
As a dog trainer, would you advocate, you know, adopting, rescuing dogs from shelters as opposed to a breeder or a pet shop or anything like that?
Absolutely. That is exactly why Barkbusters was created.
Yeah.
To prevent dogs from going into shelters and to work with shelters to get those dogs adopted. You know, the right dog can be a joy to a family. You know, he fits in, everything is great, but there are bad matches, and the wrong dog can be a nightmare for a family.
Yeah.
And that's when it's better off for the dog and the family to separate. And if they go into a shelter, we want to be able to help them. And that's another reason why our guarantee is transferable. Because if that does happen, we want to go and help that dog with the new owner or something like that. It's important to understand that it's not the dog's fault.
Yeah, please, you know.
It's not the dog's fault. It's not the owner's fault. It's just a bad match.
But when you rescue a dog from a shelter, if it's an older dog, is it true that you can't teach an old dog new tricks, or is that not true at all?
That's a myth.
Okay.
That's a myth. As a matter of fact, when you're going to get a dog, one of the major decisions you have to make is, am I going to get a puppy or am I going to get an adult dog?
Puppies are hard to come by in shelters, though, I would imagine, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Puppies, you know, usually they come from breeders, they come from a pet store, they come from something like that. And you have to understand, when you're adopting a puppy, you're adopting an infant.
Right, yeah.
You're adopting a child. It requires a lot of work. That 80-year-old is an example, okay? You have about 18 months of training, education, and working with that dog to teach him what the rules are. I use an example of when we were small, our parents taught us not to run up and wipe our hands on our guests' pants. Okay?
I was never taught that.
That's what puppies do.
Yep,
they run up and
jump.
they wipe their paws on people's pants. We have to take the time to teach them that that's not acceptable. That's just one thing. There's toileting, there's chewing, there's all the rules that, you know, what goes on in the household. So puppies are a major
just like,
undertaking.
just like a baby, you know.
So you might be better off going to a shelter and getting an adult dog. This is close to my heart because we're bark busters and that's one of our things, okay? But when you get an adult dog, he's absolutely trainable. Absolutely trainable. Our techniques use communication that the dog knows from the time he's born till the time he dies. As long as we behave like a canine leader, we'll be accepted into the pack.
Sort of like an alpha?
He'll be accepted, sort of. Everybody makes a big deal about the alpha, but there's a hierarchy, and that's what's really important. But we're adopted into the pack, and we become that leader. And that's what we help people to do, to portray ourselves as the leader for the dog. Most dogs that are in shelters, they've either been operating on their own, they've had a bad leader. In other words, they wasn't taking care of their needs, their food or the shelter or something like that. And so they've pretty much taken their responsibility onto themselves by taking
by survival.
Exactly. They have to survive.
Yeah.
And so what we do is we teach the owner how to take that responsibility away from the dog. And quite often the dog says, oh, thank you.
So it's not difficult for the
glad.
dog to start trusting you then if they're a little skittish to start or their temperament is a little standoffish?
Every dog is different. That's why we do it in your home with you and your family. But it does take time with certain dogs. Some dogs take it just like that. It depends on the individual dog. It depends on the individual family. It depends on the owner. But that's why we give unlimited lessons, because some people require a lot of help.
Yeah.
Some people don't. And so we give you as much help as you need for our one-time fee.
Now, does the dog breed make a difference as far as their ability to learn? Are some dogs dumber than other dogs as far as breeds go?
No.
No?
They're all canines. They all have the same brain. Some dogs have been more highly bred to do certain things. And so they seem dumber.
Yeah.
Because they insist on doing this.
Exactly. I have my best friend has a beagle that I love like he's my dog, love him to death. Very selective hearing. And they're scent hounds, so they will take off, and that's their primary mission, it seems, you know?
Exactly. That's what they are bred to do. So it's hard to get that out of them. One of the things that we try and do is show the owner how to use that skill to the dog's advantage. So that, for example, you'd go out in your yard with a dog like that and you hide things and you tell the dog to go find them.
And their ability is just amazing.
And he loves it. He'll go out there, he'll find it, bring it to you. Oh, look what I found.
Yeah.
So you have to tailor the training, tailor your interactions with the dog to that particular dog.
I have a game that I play with that dog, and people have told me that it's not good that I do this, and it's basically tug of war, because people have said that it's okay for them to bring it back to you, but they should be trained to let it go. But I love playing tug of war with him, and he loves it too. Is that wrong of me? It's a toy.
What it does is it sets up a competition between you and your dog. Every time that dog ends up with the toy, he beats you.
Yeah.
The way that dogs determine who's the top dog is who gets to beat who.
Right. Okay.
So the more times he beats you, the more he thinks he's the top dog.
Okay.
And that's why we don't suggest that you play that game.
Right.
It's not a bad game, but you have to make it part of your training.
Okay.
In other words, you teach him it's okay to play this. When you say, let's tug,
Okay.
then you play the game.
Oh, but then when you say it's over, then it's over.
It's over,
Then
the
he
game's
lets it
over.
go. Gotcha.
Okay? So that you can play with them, you can wrestle with them. We try and make it clear when it's playtime and when it's not. That way you're making the decision, not the dog.
It's amazing that on more occasions than not, even when you're wrestling or roughhousing with them, most dogs, even when they're showing their teeth, they bite very gentle, if at all. They don't lock down. They know it's a game. They understand that, and they're not trying to inflict damage at all, even though they're doing that.
Well, they're interacting in a canine way. They're playing, but what they're doing is they're practicing for leadership tests, and they recognize that most of the time that the owner is the leader, and so they don't clamp down on him, because he will come back and exercise his leadership. Okay, in whatever way that owner has been shown how to do that. But the problem arises when dogs don't. When there is truly a competition for leadership and the dog does bite.
Right, gets a
because
little...
what he's doing is he's saying, okay, back off.
Right.
And if you back off, I just told you what to do, so who's in charge of that relationship?
Right, right.
Okay.
Right.
So that's what we want to do is make sure that the dog understands that that's not an option for him.
Right.
Okay.
Lifestyles and like, for example, in certain parts of the country, things that have gotten a lot of publicity lately, like the dog fighting and things of that sort. It's appalling, and I'm just wondering if, because it's in such a light, if maybe slowly but surely things like that will slowly go away, even though it seems like it's ingrained in a lifestyle, maybe in the South or wherever they do it.
It's a terrible thing.
Yeah.
It's a terrible thing. I hope that the police catch every single dog fighting crew in the country, quite honestly. I think it's a barbaric thing that should go away. That's all I can really say about it. If you're adopting a dog to do that, if you're raising a dog to do that, stop.
Yeah, please.
Stop. It's illegal. It's cruel. And hopefully that dog will come back and bite you.
Yeah,
I
root for the dog
that,
in that case.
You're misusing a loving, tender animal.
It was not intended for that. It was intended, like you said, to be a part of the family, not what you're using them for.
Well, you're reversing You're reversing what we've done over thousands and thousands of years.
Domesticated
the dog to the point where he can live with people, and what you're doing is you're reversing that. And that's just not a good thing for the dog, because these are not feral dogs.
Right.
These are domesticated dogs. They're not a wolf.
Yeah.
Wolves are very different. Coyotes are very different. Dingoes are very different. There's all different wild dog breeds. They're bred to operate independently and wild. Domestic dogs are not.
I've heard in situations where people do try to have a wolf as a pet or something like that, and that's ridiculous too.
Well, it's not a good match.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
that's what
unless you live in a ranch in Montana or something like that, number one, that dog is not going to get the exercise that he needs. Number two, he is not used to interacting with people. He operates on a canine level, and in that case, it's a wild canine level, not a domesticated canine level.
Right.
Okay, and that's a very different mindset. It's a very different interaction than a domesticated dog's interaction. One of the most important things that we work on with clients is making sure that when you pick a dog, you pick the right dog. Size is important. Wolves
if you
are
have
big.
an apartment, you're not going to get a Great Dane or a wolf.
Exactly. Apartments, you want a smaller breed, something like that. You want to make sure that you can provide that dog with energy. It's a wonderful thing, these greyhound adoption things. But they have to make sure that greyhound can get the exercise that he needs.
Yeah, he doesn't just stop running one day.
Exactly.
Somebody on TV once said there's no such thing. People say, well, I have a big backyard. I have a big yard. They said there's no such thing as having a big enough yard. You need to be out walking with him, and not necessarily your yard just flat out isn't big enough.
Well, it depends on the yard.
Yeah.
There are some pretty big yards. But it really depends on the yard. Those dogs, they've been bred specifically to run. You want to give them that option, give them that ability. What you do is you take them to some place where they can run, a huge ball field, a big beach, something like that, where they can run, and give them that opportunity.
What's your opinion of dog parks where they're interacting with other dogs? Does it depend on how the other dogs are their behavior?
It depends on the owner. Some owners think that it's okay to just let the dog off the leash and let them do whatever they want to do. I've had owners who took their dog to a dog park and the dog got hurt, and they won't take the dog to the dog park again. Most dog parks are very friendly. They're great. They're wonderful things. They're great exercise for the dog. They're great socializing for the dog. Okay, because dogs interact differently than we do, and if they get to interact with other dogs, they learn how to be
Little
positive.
tricks,
and they use their brains, because no matter how well we communicate with them,
Right.
we don't communicate as well as another dog.
Right.
So dog parks are great for dogs. They're excellent. You, as the owner, when you bring your dog to a dog park, you have to take responsibility for your dog.
Right. And you can probably
make
tell
sure-
at dog parks which dogs have been trained, maybe by someone like Barkbusters, or in other methods, and others where there's really a lack of discipline there, right?
The bottom line is the dog has to respond to you. If you see your dog getting into it with another dog and you see something happening, and most people don't even recognize it, okay? You see something starting up, you want to be able to say, hey, knock it off, that's enough of that. And have your dog go, okay, I got it. That's what we help our owners do, okay? And that's what owners need to be able to do. They don't need me, but they do need that skill.
Absolutely.
Whether they get it themselves or from another trainer, they need that skill.
Is there a temperament difference once a dog has been spayed or neutered, and do you advocate that?
I strongly advocate it.
Yeah.
Strongly advocate it. If you are not going to breed your dog, then you should get them fixed. It's just there are
Same thing with cats too, really.
cats as well. There are potentials that are there when the dog is intact. Doesn't mean that dog is going to become aggressive, but he's got more testosterone. He's got different drives going on inside of him. Whether he acts on those or not depends on the dog, depends on the situations, depends on whatever. By neutering a dog, you take those potentials away, and the dog becomes much more friendly, much more relaxed. He doesn't have that sex drive, that where
Right.
what am I going to look for? You don't have the females, estrusing and attracting other dogs to
From
your
the neighborhood,
home
yeah.
when they go into heat. Okay, so it eliminates all of those bad potential things. And why would you keep the dog intact if you aren't going to breed it?
And really, the personality doesn't change that much at all. All it does is make him a better, dog for your house, really. And when you're out.
Well, there's two things that go on. Number one, it happens normally. You get your dog fixed when it's a young dog. So it's all just part of the training, part of the acclimation process to your family. Okay, but that's the first thing. The second thing is that the dog is going to be what the dog is, and you learn to work with your dog. When you get him fixed early, you can train the dog to do what you want him to do and all of that. When he's got other things going on in his mind that drive to reproduce, you have to overcome that.
Since we're taping the show in the winter, one of the things in your notes was something called winterproofing your dog. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, winterproofing the dog involves, people think that dogs, because they have a fur coat, they're impervious to the weather. That's not true. Just look at a Chihuahua.
They're shaking in the middle of the summer.
Exactly.
And when a leaf blows by. So, yeah.
Well, their coat is,
Yeah.
They were bred to be warm weather dogs. There are dogs, large breeds, Newfoundlands, Lambergers, things like that love being outside. But any dog, when it drops below 40 degrees, becomes vulnerable.
Yeah, that should be a bone of contention for dog lovers like us too, having your dog just on the leash out in the yard all the time, especially in cold weather.
We don't recommend that in any weather.
Yeah,
In
okay.
any weather. The dog is operating on his own.
Yeah.
He's just bored.
Yeah.
I mean, if I took you and tied you out in the yard and said you can only go in this circle, you'd get pretty bored too.
Sure would.
So that's not something that we recommend. But you do have to give the dog exercise. You do have to let the dog go to the bathroom. So he's got to be outside. So you have to monitor how long he's been outside. Check him when he comes back in when the weather is bitter. Okay, when it's 10 degrees or 8 degrees outside, when your dog comes back in, take a look at him. Make sure he doesn't have frostbite. Check his ears. Make sure his ears aren't tender. Check his paws. Check his nose. Make sure that he's safe. Monitor the time that he's out there. Okay? In the summer, you can let him out there for half an hour, 45 minutes, no problem. In the winter, 8, 10 degrees, 5, 10 minutes is about the tops that a domestic dog you really want to take a chance.
And usually they won't want to stay out very long if it's bitter. They want to just get their business done and come back, right?
Well, sometimes they get distracted, like your friend's beagle, for example.
Oh, yeah.
He smells a rabbit, he's
Gone, yeah.
He doesn't care that it's 8 degrees, he's off and
Yeah,
running,
yeah.
okay?
And they like to play in the snow too. So.
Some dogs do.
Yeah.
Some dogs do. So you want to check if your dog does have frostbite, you want to warm that area up and call your vet.
Right.
Okay, get in touch with your vet, have your vet check it out.
As we will get ready to wrap up the show here, anything else you want to make sure we touch on before we go? It's just sort of, it's amazing. There are so many dog lovers out there, but little tips like this, you know, help, especially someone who may not yet be a dog owner and are thinking about it. Like you said, it's very important to think and do your research as far as selecting the right dog for you. Your living environment, whether you have kids or not, whether you have other pets or not too, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Other pets are just other dogs to a dog. A cat is a dog, a bird is a dog, people are dogs.
Right.
Everything is a dog to a dog. He has no other frame of reference. So you have to understand that this dog is bred to do certain things. You know, for example, beagles are loud dogs. You know, they're not ideal. They're not ideal apartment dogs. Okay, greyhounds, on the other hand, they're runners. They need lots of exercise. So you have to understand that this dog has been bred for a purpose, and that purpose has to fit in with your family. It has to fit in with your lifestyle. Some dogs are bred to be family dogs. Some dogs are bred to be working dogs. Some dogs are bred to be, you know, just hunters. Okay,
Right.
It depends on the individual breed. You want to get a breed that's going to fit into your family and your lifestyle. It's very important. The other thing is make sure that you're giving them, that you can give that dog the adequate exercise that it needs.
Right.
Okay. So many times, the major issue that the dog has is he just doesn't get enough exercise.
Yeah.
He's turned into a coffee table.
There are many obese dogs out there. What do you do about the realities of life these days where people are going to be working for 8 hours and, you know, your dog's home? What do you do, you know?
It depends on the individual breed, but what you want to do is make sure when you're home, you give the dog the attention and you adequately exercise him.
That's what you got to
Okay.
do. Yeah.
Most dogs, once you leave, they just go to sleep.
Yeah, until you get
That's
home.
what they do. They go to sleep.
We are out of time. I want you to give the Barkbusters website for people to go and learn.
Barkbusters, www.barkbusters.com. We have a 800 number, 888-500-BARK. And go to the website. You can put in your zip code, and it will put you in touch with the Barkbuster in your area.
Dave Foley from Barkbusters, thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
And thank you for joining us for another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. See you next time. Take care.